Director of Communications. Alyssa, welcome back. Thanks for being here this morning. The president just tweeted out feeling great. He also said that he's looking forward to the debate next week. What more can you tell us about the president's condition this morning?
The president's improving dramatically and quickly, but listen, we understand he's not out of the woods. He's continuing to team here. He's energetic. It's taking senior staff around him to tell him, let's slow down the pace, but he is working. He is here at the White House. He's making calls. He's meeting with senior advisors. His priorities are focusing on the American people. We've got a Supreme Court nominee that we want to usher through to confirmation. We're still working to defeat this virus. I know a lot of the focus has been on the president's state. His focus is on what more therapeutics can I get on the market? How are we moving toward getting a vaccine through Operation Warp Speed? So long answer short, he's doing very well.
Based on that answer, because we spoke to the Trump campaign earlier and I asked the same thing, I'll ask you, does the president feel like he wants to change the messaging on the coronavirus or even make it more of a central issue of his campaign now that he's experienced it firsthand?
So I think it has been a central issue. We've said this is one of the most important things afflicting our country. And from the outset, he's been working round the clock to deliver PPE, ventilators, getting therapeutics on the market. One thing I'd want to communicate to your viewers is on this date, you are the most likely to survive and get treatment for coronavirus in the U.S. than ever prior because of this president's leadership and how he's prepared us to deal with it. So I think it's still very much a focus, but he's going to talk about forward-looking, where we are with therapeutics, where we're getting with the vaccine, and how we could keep our country reopening and getting people back to normal life safely.
Alyssa, just to go back to your point about you think it has been a central issue, I feel like many people listening would push back on that and say, but what about the Rose Garden event, the lack of social distancing? Not to bring all that back up again, but that was the reality that we saw of the White House, the campaign, the no mask wearing. Is it fair to say that it was a central issue of the Trump campaign, the coronavirus?
Well, I don't speak for the campaign, but I could say at the White House, we always take precautions in events we host. And I certainly think in light of the president's positive test and the first lady, we're going to take even more for the time being to protect essential staff around him. But our message has actually been the same from the outset of this. The basic mitigation practices are the most important thing to protecting Americans.
Alyssa, just when you say that, we start to remember the images of the Rose Garden again, of all those people commingling. There were some of them hugging, shaking hands, breaching social distance. Let me just read this to you because it's new and I'll share it with you. You can react. I don't know if that's your phone, but somebody's phone's blowing up. So this is an AP headline. White House staff, Secret Service eye virus with fear and anger. The West Wing of the White House is a ghost town. And this is from the article. Nonetheless, the mood within the White House remains somber, with staff fearful that they may have been exposed to the virus as they confront a new reality. A work site that once seemed like a bubble of safety is anything but. They also have been engaged in finger pointing over conflicting reports released about the president's health, as well as a lack of information provided internally. What do you say?
Listen,
go ahead.
Yeah, Sandra, I don't give much credence to anonymous sources. I'm here willing to put my name to it. We feel comfortable working here. Those of us who are still here, we are taking precautions in the West Wing. It's a serious time. We need to be washing our hands. We need to be wearing masks when we can't socially distance, but that's just not representative of the vibe in the White House. If anything, the team has been highly inspired by the president's just strong leadership through this. And I just want to address one thing, because there was some criticism over him going to the Truman balcony and, waving and kind of showing the sign of strength.
By the way, while you say that, we've got the image up next to you of him standing at the balcony, and I'll ask you about just that, because there's another vantage point where the president, he had just taken off his mask, he stands at the balcony, and then you see a photographer quickly behind him. And when we were speaking to doctors earlier, they said, well, it's okay, he was standing alone. He wasn't. There was a photographer very close in proximity to a man who's been diagnosed with COVID-19 and is still very much sick with it.
Let me address the first point and then get to that. The first is, in times like this, in these moments in our country, it's highly important that the commander-in-chief express confidence to our domestic population, but it's also very important to our allies and adversaries who are watching closely to see, is he projecting an image of strength? And that is exactly what he did last night. Precautions were taken. His mask was not taken off until he was distanced from others. But I want to make sure that with regard to the photographer, this was a brief interaction. What we know about this virus is its prolonged exposure and contact. Our photographers know to wear a mask. We know when we work with the president, wear your mask, keep your distance. I think this is much ado about nothing by the media. I would say this: the world and the American people needed to see their president strong and leading, and that's exactly what he's doing.
This is the Wall Street Journal headline. That was AP. This is Wall Street Journal. Trump and his aides have long played down importance of face mask distancing right up until the hours before the president tested positive for coronavirus. He and his staff often dismissed or ignored public health safety precautions. Joe Biden's all but said it's the president's own fault that he's sick with it. How is the president responding to that? We heard that from Joe Biden last night.
I think it's ridiculous. This president's actually been leading. Joe Biden talks a lot about what he would do, and everything he mentions, this president's already done. Surging PPE, surging therapeutics, racing to get a safe and effective vaccine to market, making sure we have adequate ventilators and rebuild our national stockpile. But I'd also mention this president has done more while sick with the coronavirus than Joe Biden does on an average day. The American people want a fighter. They want a tough leader. That's what they have in President Trump.
This is the president's video message that is also getting a lot of headlines this morning. Don't let the virus dominate you, says the president. Listen.
Don't let it dominate. Don't let it take over your lives. Don't let that happen. We have the greatest country in the world. We're going back. We're going back to work. We're going to be out front. As your leader, I had to do that. I knew there's danger to it, but I had to do it. I stood out front. I led.
Perhaps you can explain the messaging there as you try to point out the president's message there, his standing on the balcony, taking the mask off as a sign of strength. Isn't the best thing that we can do for this country to get rid of this virus and show that we can defeat it?
Absolutely. So the president's message there is clear. While taking the safe mitigation practices that we've known since the outset of this virus, Americans need to get back to ordinary life. We have businesses closing, people who cannot who cannot make ends meet. We've got child abuse cases going unreported. We have children falling behind in schools. These are all things that the president is actively fighting against. He wants us to get through the coronavirus, be safe, be smart, so we can get back to normal life. Our economy is improving rapidly precisely because of his leadership. But his point is we can't do this forever. We can't just keep our nation locked down. Maybe that is the safest thing to deal with the coronavirus, but it's certainly not for dealing with mental health, with addiction, with child abuse cases being reported. He wants Americans back to normal life safely.
Everybody wants to get back to life. We want to do it safely. We all agree on that. So the president does plan to debate next week.
Yes, he does. He's looking forward to it. He's ready. And I think he's going to go in with an even new mindset on the coronavirus. He's firsthand, lost friends to this. He's grieved with Americans. But now he himself is coming as a survivor. And I think you're going to hear that in his debate.
Is that something that he is strategizing right now, Alyssa?
I've not been involved in the debate strategy, but I'm happy to circle back with you on that.
Alyssa, thank you for joining us this morning. We'll have you back soon.
Thanks, Sandra.
All right.